You make a mistake in a meeting, someone points it out, and before you can say a word, before you've even fully processed what's happened, your face is already betraying you. A wave of heat, a flush of red spreading across your cheeks, visible to everyone in the room.
And the cruel irony is that the more you think about the fact that you're blushing, the worse it gets. The awareness of it accelerates it. You cannot stop it. You cannot hide it. Your face is broadcasting exactly the emotion you most want to conceal.
Blushing is one of the strangest involuntary responses the human body has. And Charles Darwin, who thought carefully about almost every aspect of human biology, called it the most peculiar and most human of all expressions. More human, he said, than laughter or tears.
And he had a specific reason for saying that. As far as scientists can tell, we are the only species on Earth that blushes. Not just in degree, not just humans blush more than other animals, in kind. Other animals don't do this at all. There is no equivalent response in any other species, which makes blushing a genuine
Evolutionary puzzle. Why would a species evolve a response that involuntarily reveals its
own embarrassment? What possible advantage could that confer?
The answers, when you dig into them, are fascinating, and they tell you something unexpected about the role of embarrassment in holding human society together.
Let's start with the basic biology. What is actually happening when you blush?
Blushing is caused by the dilation of blood vessels in the face, specifically the capillaries just beneath the skin. When the sympathetic nervous system fires in response to a social trigger, embarrassment, shame, being suddenly the center of attention, it releases adrenaline. Adrenaline typically causes blood vessels to constrict, but in the face, there's a paradox.
The facial blood vessels
respond to adrenaline differently from most of the body. Instead of constricting, they dilate. Blood rushes into the face, the skin reddens, and this happens specifically and exclusively in the face. Not the hands, not the neck in most people, not the chest, just the face. This selectivity is itself interesting.
The mechanism appears to be specifically designed, if that's the right word, to affect the face, the most visible, socially significant part of the body, the part that other people look at when they're reading your emotional state.
The triggers for blushing are almost exclusively social. Being praised unexpectedly, being caught in a lie or a mistake, being stared at, having something private suddenly made public. The mere thought of a past embarrassment recalled vividly enough can trigger a blush. And this is what distinguishes blushing from other physiological stress responses.
You don't blush when you're frightened by a physical danger. You don't blush when you're in pain. You blush specifically when you are being, or imagine yourself being, negatively evaluated by other people, or even positively evaluated unexpectedly.
It is, at its core, a social signal.
A response to the perceived gaze of others and what that gaze might be seeing.
Darwin was puzzled by this. In his 1872 book, The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, he devoted an entire chapter to blushing, more than to any other expression. And his puzzlement was evolutionary. Most involuntary expressions have an obvious adaptive function. Fear responses prepare you for fight or flight. Disgust protects you from contamination. But blushing? It reveals your inner state to potential adversaries. It seems, on the face of it, self-defeating.
The modern evolutionary answer is that blushing is an honest signal, and honest signals are enormously valuable in social species.
Think about what blushing communicates. It says, I know I violated a social norm. I care about what you think of me. I am not indifferent to your judgment. In a species that depends on cooperation, on trust, on the ability to read others' intentions, this information is genuinely useful to the people receiving the signal.
Research by Dacher Keltner and Brenda Buswell at the University of California, Berkeley in the 1990s found that people who blush more readily are judged as more trustworthy, more likable, and more moral by observers. The blush signals that the blusher has internalized social norms, that they feel shame when those norms are violated.
And crucially, because blushing is involuntary, it can't be faked. You can say sorry without meaning it, you can fake remorse, but you cannot produce a genuine blush on command. The involuntary nature of the response is precisely what makes it credible.
This is the concept of costly signaling in evolutionary biology. A signal is most informative when it's difficult or impossible to fake. The blush is valuable as a social signal precisely because it bypasses conscious control. It's the body telling the truth even when the mind might prefer to lie.
There's a study by Matthew Feinberg, Rob Willer, and Dr. Keltner published in 2012 that demonstrated this directly. Participants who blushed more easily in response to embarrassing situations were rated as more pro-social, more cooperative, more generous, more trustworthy in subsequent interactions. The blush was functioning as a reliable indicator of character, and people responded to it accordingly, even without consciously registering what they were doing.
So the evolutionary argument for blushing is essentially this. In a species built around social cooperation, a reliable, unfakeable signal of norm awareness and social sensitivity is adaptive. It builds trust, it smooths over transgressions. It communicates without words that the relationship matters to you.
Which reframes blushing entirely. It's not a weakness, it's not a betrayal by your own body. It's a sophisticated social technology, one that evolved specifically because it cannot be controlled, because its value comes precisely from its involuntary nature.
Now, why only the face? The selectivity is worth dwelling on. Other parts of the body have blood vessels that could theoretically dilate in the same way. Why is the reddening confined to the most visible, socially scrutinized surface?
The honest answer is that scientists don't fully know. The mechanism, the paradoxical vasodilation of facial blood vessels in response to adrenaline, is documented. The why of its facial specificity is less certain. But the leading hypothesis is that it co-evolved with the social function. Because the face is where the signal is most readable, the response concentrated there. Selection favored individuals whose blushing was most visible and most socially clear, and over time, the response became face-specific.
There's also a self-awareness component to blushing that no other involuntary response has. You have to be aware of yourself being perceived by others in order to blush. Animals don't appear to have this kind of social self-awareness, the capacity to model yourself as an object in someone else's perception, which is why they don't blush.
Blushing requires what psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to understand that other people have mental states, and that those mental states can include perceptions of you. A creature without theory of mind has no mechanism for the social self-consciousness that triggers a blush.
And in humans, theory of mind develops in early childhood, around the age of 3 to 4. Before that, children don't blush, even when they do things that would mortify an adult. The capacity for embarrassment, and with it, blushing, appears specifically when the child becomes capable of imagining how they appear in another person's mind.
Which is a beautiful convergence. Blushing isn't just a social signal. It's a marker of one of the most distinctively human cognitive capacities.
The ability to see yourself through someone else's eyes. There's one more thing worth mentioning, because it comes up whenever blushing is discussed. The phenomenon of erythrophobia, the fear of blushing, a condition where the anticipatory anxiety about blushing in social situations becomes so intense that it itself triggers the blush, creating a feedback loop that can become genuinely debilitating. People with severe erythrophobia can find that the fear of blushing prevents them from entering social situations at all. The anticipated embarrassment of blushing becomes more distressing than the original social situation. It's a cruel irony. The social signal that evolved to build trust and smooth over transgressions becomes, for some people, a source of profound social withdrawal. Treatment typically involves cognitive behavioral therapy, addressing the catastrophic thinking around blushing rather than trying to eliminate the blush itself. Because you can't eliminate the blush. That's rather the point. And learning to relate differently to an involuntary response that you cannot control, to accept it rather than fight it, turns out to be far more effective than trying to suppress it. In a strange way, accepting the blush is the most evolutionarily appropriate response. It's your body doing what it evolved to do, telling the people around you something true, signaling that you are, at your core, someone who cares. Darwin called it the most human of expressions. And having looked at what it actually does and why, I think he was right. So do I. Thank you for listening to The Why Behind Everything. If you're enjoying the series, please subscribe on YouTube. It makes a real difference. Next time, we're asking, why do we dream?
We spend roughly 6 years of our lives dreaming. Scientists have been trying to explain why for over a century, and the honest answer is that we still don't fully know. But what we do know is stranger and more fascinating than most people realize.
See you then.